Welcome into another episode of The Highlight. I'm Chandler Lyles, your host, and today I'm joined by a new friend of mine, but we've been running in concentric circles, it feels like, for a really long time. Jonathan Fisher, the owner of Bevanda. How did you become an entrepreneur, and how did Bevanda start?
It's a great question. So my background, I was actually born and raised Amish. And so if you know anything about the Amish culture, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a bunch of hardworking dudes. And my mom comes from a family of entrepreneurs. And I remember growing up, she was a hustler, like side hustles all the time, good work ethic, and that was kind of instilled at a young age. To your question of how Bavana started, my parents imported flameless battery candles, and they would take the hand wax. It was a pillar candle. They would take wax, a block of wax, and they would melt it and brush it on the candle so it looked like a realistic candle. So that's the importing side that kind of ties into the Bavana story. My older brother had a retail store at the time, a gift shop, furniture store, and this was back in 2015. If you know the brand Corksicle,
Oh, yeah.
stainless steel water brand, we got that in 2015, put it on our shelves, and it took off,
Mm.
just skyrocketed. And this was kind of their startup phase. I think they might have started up 2012, 13, 14, but 2015 they had a high growth spurt, and we couldn't keep it on our shelves. And so we reached out to Yeti at the time, and they weren't accepting wholesale clients at that time. And so my younger brother Leon, he's the serial entrepreneur in the family, crazy, high ideas, like one out of 100, the good one, right? And so he's
Sure.
like, water bottles, this can't be that tough a business. And so with our boots on the ground in China with the candles, he's like, hey, let's get some samples, and that's how Bevanda was born. So the initial strategy back in 2018 when we started was B2B, wholesale distribution, get shelf space. But it quickly turned out that our landlord at the time jumped in our showroom, the candle showroom at the time, had a small display of water bottles, and he's like, man, that's a really cool water bottle. If you can print 500 with my logo, I'll order 500. And that's kind of how the promotional side of the business started. So we had a decision to make early on. Are we going to follow the B2B model,
Mm.
or are we going to go after the promotional space? And at the time, we had no idea, like naive, right? Just entrepreneurs like, yeah, I can do this. And we jumped into the thing, no idea how competitive the industry is going to be. And this was 2018.
Mm.
You've seen what big brands are doing today. It's even more competitive today because you have Stanley, Hydro Flask, Hydro Peak. You have the brands on Amazon. You have Target, Costco, Walmart, and it's hindsight now. If we would have knew what we know now, would have we done it? I'm not so sure. So my
Yeah.
point to that is we started in the promotional space kind of as a leverage, and so that's kind of where we see in an avenue, and that's kind of what we've been riding since.
Mm. So you're saying that because of all the additional competition that we've seen in the stainless sort of water coffee mug market, that you guys made the right decision to shift to uh, promotional products, or you're saying that it was the wrong decision? I'm a little lost there.
I wouldn't say neither right or wrong. I think that the
Hmm.
promotional avenue has cash flowed to kind of where we want to go.
Mm.
Um,
Got it.
to build a brand, as you know, it takes a lot of cash. And so we just felt like how is our product proprietary? And the fact of the matter is none of it is. Even Stanley, they just capitalized on influencer marketing, right? And so what's proprietary about a bootstrap brand in small town Lancaster County, Pennsylvania? How are we going to gain any traction on Amazon, on our
Mm.
e-commerce? Like the customer acquisition is just extremely expensive. Influencer marketing is expensive, and so we just felt like it was kind of the easy route, but it was an avenue that a lot of other brands weren't really capitalizing on. And so we were like,
Mm.
hey, let's ride this. You've mentioned earlier about, I mean, we do 65% of our sales in Q4. That's the downside of it. We're trying to leverage of like, how can we stabilize this Q1, 2, and 3, where we're not
Mhm.
just ebbs and flows in Q4.
Yeah. Man, I have so much to unpack there because there's like the B2B challenges, the seasonality thing you just brought up. There's like the whole Amish background, which is very unique. I mean, that is a very unique thing to that area of the country. I'm woefully ignorant of that whole culture, so I'd love to ask a question or two about that if that's all right with
Yeah,
you.
for sure.
What role does that upbringing have in like your current entrepreneurial journey? Like it from my outside perspective, what I understand the Amish to be is like very kind, very hardworking, very principled people, which are seems like a recipe for success for a successful entrepreneur. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are on it as somebody that's actually as a part of that culture.
Yeah. I mean, and they know how to work. They're hard workers. I
Mhm.
mean, you've seen some of the barn fires. I mean, you've seen some of the memes and some of
Yeah,
the reels on Instagram. Like,
yeah,
there's this. I have a background in volunteer firefighting, and there's this joke that when there's a barn that burns down, is like, hey, what time are we setting trusses tomorrow? And it's literally, you've seen these barn
yeah.
raisings. They exist, but these guys, they know how to work. And so I remember at a young age. I mean, second, third grade, I'd have to do household chores, barn chores, take care of the horses, right? So what I've learned through all that is at the time I would complain, and even in my early teens, and my mom would always say, "You'll thank me someday." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, right. I hate this crap." But I in my early 20s and late 20s, and even bootstrapping a startup is like, "Wow, thanks, mom." And so I think it's just if you study a lot of entrepreneurs, I think I'm an Eagles fan, so I just seen a reel yesterday of Jason Kelsey, right? He was a
Mm,
walk on with the Philadelphia Eagles, didn't start his first year, and he's
mm,
probably going to be a Hall of Famer. And he says
yeah.
it's not about talent, it's about work ethic and having the will and the desire to to be successful. And so tying that work ethic in the Bevanda in the Amish culture has really I've really valued that. It's kind of this
Mm,
grit, and as you know, running a startup, sometimes you just got to put your boots on and go. And Dave Ramsey says this: you got to go out, get out of your cave, go kill something, and drag it home. And that's hard work. That's not necessarily talent. That's hard work. And so
mm,
I value that. You talked about principles. I mean, they're trustworthy people. This is a fun fact. I've never in my lifetime heard of an Amish person go bankrupt. They'll go
mm,
bankrupt. They'll go broke, but they'll pay the debt back. It's just,
mm,
I owe you money, Chandler. I'm going to pay you back. And so it's just a lot of good, hardworking values. And that it's a heritage that it took me probably too long to realize that, because you come out of that
mm.
culture and you're like, you try to just shove everything in the wayside. It's trash, but it's not the case anymore. We live in the Amish community now. Just great, great people.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You gotta like, at least for me, when you come up as a kid and teenager, and then a young adult, and then you gotta kind of like strike out on your own, and then you sort of form your own opinions about your upbringing and all the things, and your own life experiences fuel things, and then it's kind of like chopping off dead wood, right? You realize what was a little bit of fluff, or what was a dogma or something like that about your upbringing, but then when you finally get rid of a lot of that stuff, you get to the core essence of like, oh, this is the actual thing that I should have been bringing with me all along, without all the extraneous like drama or thoughts or their own personal experiences that informed their own way they communicated about those things. And so I totally relate to that. But the hard work thing is interesting because I know so many entrepreneurs that look at hard work as the key to success. And it really is, especially in the beginning when you're bootstrapping something, because you're essentially going from somebody that doesn't have money to be able to create leverage. So you use your time to create leverage. But it sounds like in the first couple of years of Bevanda, you guys were working really, really hard, but then you had to pivot. And so like take me through like your mental process at that time when like you had this belief of like hard work and getting after it was going to really get you to the goal, to the finish line, or to the next level, at least as an entrepreneur, because we know there's no finish line in entrepreneurship, right? It's just the next game
Yep.
starts
Yep.
immediately. So like what was it like to have to like look in the mirror in that moment and go like, oh, we gotta do something here, because like we're two opportunities in front of us. Hard work has brought us to a point where hard work's not going to make this decision for us. We just kind of have to choose.
Oh man, that's so true for us. I mean, we've we're used to doing things with our hands, right? Just go out, kill something, drag it back to the cave, and that was actually not the case for us in Q1, 2, and 3. ever since the existence of Bevanda, being that we do 65% of our sales in Q4. So that was probably the biggest challenge of the crew here, even going back to 2018, even this summer, is it forces you to be creative, right? So it's easy. The fourth quarter is easy for us. I got 3 Amish guys on the team here. They know how to get things done, right?
Mm,
But in the slow season, when sales aren't happening, it forces you to be creative. And I think that's kind of where the entrepreneurial spirit comes in. You can be as hardworking as you want and spinning your
mm,
wheels. So we had to kind
mm,
of pull back from that hardworking, like, this is what I can do with my hands. This is on my ability. We've kind of had to pull back from that and really get creative with our marketing. And hey,
mm,
how can we get creative? What are some things that people aren't doing? What are other brands doing? What are other things that they're not doing that we can capitalize on? And so, I mean, hard work is a huge part of that, but there's a lot more, as you know, as a business owner, there's a lot more than just hard work.
mm.
You gotta be creative. You gotta be willing to do things that other brands, other businesses aren't willing to do in order to win. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking about risk taking now. And so, entrepreneurs are risk takers, but then something happens after you bootstrap this thing and you guys have crossed 5 years in business, which is sort of like the milestone for like, we kind of have product market fit. And now it's just like, how do we become better business owners? Like the first 5 years of any entrepreneur endeavor is really about establishing product market fit and really getting like systems in place, people in place, all those things. But once you cross that threshold, you've kind of established something. And then I don't know about you, but this happened with my barbecue restaurant the first time around. I'd look back and I would think about taking a risk on trying something new or getting creative as you're talking about. And I'd want to run from it. And it would almost take like an extra layer of discipline or like activity or something to like get me to go and take that risk. Like, how do you manage risk taking now or being creative and trying new things that could maybe not pay off? Like, do you have a framework for that? Do you have a thought process? Do you have a story that's like, I took a risk and it didn't work, or anything like that?
my I think there's calculated risk, and then there's stupid risk, and then there's risks that turn into multi-million dollar ideas, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think with risk taking, you're gonna make mistakes. Probably the first example of that risk was back in 2019, when we were a year into the company, and we had several large orders of promotional items, coffee tumblers, water bottles with promotional logos on them, and we would get them done in China. So there was MOQ problems, there was quality control issues, and so we were like, we gotta find a way to print on demand. We could easily buy 10,000 units in white, have them in our warehouse space, but we got to be able to pull from that inventory and print 2 of them if a customer wants, because other people weren't really doing that. Everybody else had MOQs. So my brother was still here at the time, and he found a digital UV ink printer, and our family, we were so excited. We're like, this is the answer. This is it. At the time, we were doing about 200,000 in sales, and we got the estimate from the printing company, and it was $250,000. We're like, oh man, this would solve all of our problems, but we cannot afford a $250,000 printer doing 200,000 in sales. And at that time, we kind of seen the B2B competition. We're like, man, and I think you said it earlier, trade shows. We've seen the trade shows kind of on the decline, because I've kind of viewed trade shows as this giant reunion of buyers where they're just like, eh. And
Mm,
social media was really kind of taking off, and all these buyers, they're on social media, they see the new and upcoming products. And trade shows was kind of, I mean, you can easily dump 15, 20 grand in a trade show and lose it all and not get a single client. So we're
mm,
like, this could be the answer. And so, just from my faith background, Amish, most they believe in Christianity, right? So it's just a kind of a form of uh, kind of a culture thing with the Amish, but still a believer today. And just kind of discerning with the Lord, my entire family felt peace about it. We're like, we feel like this is what we need to do, and it's that gut feeling. Like, I'm sure you know, as an entrepreneur, it's a gut feeling. You got to follow it. And so my dad, my mom, my brother Leon, and I, we were like, hey, this is a decision that we need to make. And we pulled the trigger. It was
Mm,
all based out of faith, and we haven't once regret. It was the best decision we've made because
yeah.
doing that was a risk. There was no data. It was all of this might fail. And the thing is,
Mm,
that was a calculated risk because we're like, the printers don't necessarily lose their value, but it was
mm.
still like, okay, we really got to start marketing correctly. And so it immediately took off. And that's kind of when we were kind of deemed as a fourth quarter business. Did a ton of sales that following fourth quarter.
Yeah. I something came to my mind there, hearing that story, and I don't think this was you, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it. There's this narrative with people that are going to go start their first business or even running a business kind of like you guys are, and they're like, you got to commit. Your problem is you know how to hard work, but you're not committed enough. And it's like the whole what is it, burn the boats analogy. It's like you got to really go all in. And I don't hear you saying that there. I hear you saying like, yeah, it's a risk, but if it doesn't work out, we can sell the equipment and we can go back and we can pivot again and we can continue going forward. Like, where do you fall on the whole, like, should you go all in on one option? Should you have backup options? Like, what are your thoughts there?
I think I did a LinkedIn post maybe 4 months ago on plan A versus plan B. I'm not a firm believer of you just got to like plan A is the
Mm-hmm.
only option. I think business isn't like that. I think if plan A doesn't work, you have to be willing to go to plan B. And I think so many times business owners, founders especially, I'm not the founder, but I'm right behind the founder. I was part of the startup, but founders especially, they're so set on what their idea is that this is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And as a founder, even as an owner, you don't determine the success of your business. The market does.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to be willing to change your mind. And so I believe in like, hey, we're not going to quit. Business, I mean, as you know this, Chandler, business knocks you down. You make some expensive mistakes. You get frustrated. I mean, just being vulnerable. July is the most brutal time here at Bevanda. And this July, just coming out of a season of, wow, I thought we made some good decisions, and here cash flow's tight. I get home from work and my wife is like, "What did you do today?" I was like, "I have no idea. I'm just trying to keep the thing afloat." And so that doesn't mean like you're burning the ship. It's just mean I'm gonna get beat. I'm gonna get knocked down. But tomorrow morning, there's new mercies in the morning. I'm gonna get back up. So I don't know if does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Well, one, it's amazing how many times in my life I've felt 100 times better just with a full night's sleep. And I think going back to this propensity as entrepreneurs to just work hard, and it's like if I don't need to sleep, I don't need to sleep. Like I will work and forego the sleep thing, and then I'll just grind through it, kind of thing. But you are right. You will have a whole clear mindset first thing in the morning. At least I do. I'm very much that way. But when I was younger, my first business, I would just try to outwork my problems, and I think you can't outwork every problem. I think you can do it to a certain level in business, but I think at some point you kind of have to step back, kind of like you've been talking here, and be a little more strategic with things. And you have to think more like, okay, long term, not so reactionary Friday to Friday. And even though you guys may have had and I appreciate being so honest about the situation, because I think in entrepreneurship, too often we're very like everything's fine, just another day in paradise, and you just grin and bear it. In the military, I was in the Air Force. We had a saying, it was embrace the suck, and that was just kind of the way it was, right? You embraced the suck and you moved on. But I love that, and you had a strategy and you had a plan for the year, and it still is tightening up now, and you're able to persevere through it. And so that was my question, like, what role does perseverance play in being a entrepreneur?
It's everything. You have to persevere. And I think you've said it. It's you got to think about the long term. I think social media kind of, especially with some of the influencers, some of the social media marketing YouTubers, they hit some of these young kids are coming out and making some really, really good money. And I think that happens to less than 1% of Americans, right? Where they get lucky and really hit it well because there's no new ideas under the sun. It's just more
Mm-hmm.
creative ways to do it. And so I think that you got to persevere. You got to be, we kind of had this term that we're going to be here for a while. We're going to sit here for a while. It's not going to happen overnight. It even gets distracting where, I mean, Lancaster County is a very blue collar community, a lot of successful businesses. And it's very easy to get caught in the comparison trap of like, oh, that company over there is blowing up. They had a reel go
Mm-hmm.
viral. And it's like you can't engage with the guy swimming in the next lane. You have to
Mm-hmm.
stay focused. And I think that's part of perseverance of like, hey, this is gonna be it's gonna be tough. There's gonna be challenges. You're gonna get knocked down, but you have to get back up. So perseverance, yeah, 100%. You hit the nail on the head. It plays a critical role.
Yeah. I love that. It's probably the only thing that keeps businesses going. I think that I think you're right. There is no new idea under the sun. I mean, you guys have basically taken other people's products and a printer and combined them together into a really cool new business. And we're a digital marketing agency, and we've taken like running ads and like coaching and combined them together. And so now we've created something new. And you're very right that you don't have to go out and invent the next new thing. The iPod was really just the combination of, Apple's
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure and a MP3 player. And it's the comparison thing is so interesting to me because I fall into that a lot. Unfortunately, because I'm in digital marketing, I'm on the internet all the time. And then there are times where I just sort of have to get up and go for a walk because I can feel myself slipping into that comparison thing. Because, like you've said, being an entrepreneur is really difficult. You've got really challenging times. You might go home and talk to your wife, and all of a sudden it's like, I don't know what I did today, but we survived. And so, like, what is your routine for getting out of the like cycle that can be an all-encompassing job that is owning a business? Like, what else do you do to sort of balance yourself out, or is there balance?
I'm still on that path of discovery. I don't know if I have an answer for that.
Mm,
Um, I like to surround myself with other entrepreneurs and the ones that are vulnerable. I've become friends with a Chick-fil-A operator. We're in a peer group together, and from the outside in, you look at Chick-fil-A, right? What they've done well, exceptionally well, and I mean, he just turned 40 last week. And about 5 years ago, there was kind of this facade of like a 35-year-old being a Chick-fil-A operator. Like, dude, you must have had it like Chick-fil-A. You've got it on a pedestal. But his story, there's 16 years of insane disappointments, insane hard work. And so when you hear it coming from a guy like that, it's like, man, life doesn't hand you anything. And so I think it's just being grounded with, having conversations with guys like you, like entrepreneur isn't always sexy. It's not.
mm, mm-hmm.
And so just that reality, just doing reality checks. Another thing that's really helpful is, have you heard of the book, The Gap and the Gain?
I don't
Really,
I don't
really
know.
good book. Really, really
Yeah.
good book. Put that on your list. He talks
All right.
about the gap and then the gain. It's like measure the success in your life, even the last year or your business. Where have you come in the last year?
Mm,
That's
okay.
the gain. 95% of people live in the gap. They're like, well, I want to be up here and I'm not, and I don't know what's going
Mm,
on. You lose sight of where you're going. And so that's really like, okay. And I just told my sister this morning, when we started importing back in 2018, we were using a broker. They were charging us 18%. And as a small business, we're like, hey, we're going to dive in the deep end. We made some awful mistakes, crucial, expensive mistakes. But I just told her this morning, look how far we've come. In 2019, we had no clue what we were doing. We didn't even know what a tariff code was. To today, we're developing our own products. We have 3 of our own products, our own molds that we own. And so it's not about, man, we wish we'd be over here, because you're going to get distracted.
mm,
No, this is where we've come. Let's just stay consistent and slow, steady growth. Another thing to
mm,
that slow, steady growth is grassroots. There's many people that will tell you, it's like, man, slow growth is better over time. And so we've had to embrace that reality. Everybody wants 200-300% growth year over year, right? Like, these guys are blowing it up. But like, man, it's hard to do. And so I think there's reality checks. So I don't know if that answers your question of balance, but I think just you got to have perspective.
yeah. No, it
And
definitely does. I would say that my first business, so it was a barbecue restaurant. We started like you guys, it was bootstrap, 10 on the side of the road. but I had this very unhealthy drive. I was 24 at the time when I started it. So I was a young guy. So I give myself a little bit of a pass, but not too much. But I just had this drive of like, competitive guy, want to win, want to get to this stage. I used to tell everybody like, yeah, we're going to open up 1,000 barbecue restaurants, blah, 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 blah. And I never took the time to ask why. Like, why am I doing all of this? It's like some external validation thing. And then I read a book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game, which I'm sure you've heard of or
Hmm.
read. And in that book really changed my perspective, but I didn't read it until after I closed and crashed the business. And what I ended up figuring out was that I was racing or playing some game that I wasn't actually playing. Like there's no winning, there's no losing. Like we had a barbecue restaurant in Lexington, Kentucky. They still eat barbecue there. Like it's not it's not that game hasn't finished just because Lyle's Barbecue
Hmm.
doesn't exist there anymore. And so then I had to do a lot of internal thinking and reflecting and go, okay, why do I want to be an entrepreneur? Like, what is it about this that makes me want to sign up for this insanity? Because it's difficult. I think the SBA says the average entrepreneur makes like $47,000 a year. Like, you could do better than that in an entry level job in today's world with way less risk. And so, why would you sign up for all that? And so, I've come up with my own reasons, and I have my own like understanding of why I'm on this journey, and it's my passion and all the things. And now I've gotten to the point. We actually have a core value at High Beam now called always content but never complacent. And so we're always happy with where we are right now. I am so happy to be on a podcast talking to you, making new
Hmm.
friends. I'm excited to come to your thing in a couple months, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. Like I'm really happy with where we're at, but I'm not complacent. Like I'd love to
Come
be
on.
10.
I
We have
love
10-year
that.
goals that are 10x what we're doing now. And it is a, like if we never got bigger than we are now, I love my family, I love my house, I love the people I work with, I love getting to have conversations with this. I'll be okay. And I'm okay with where I'm at. But that barbecue restaurant closed because I wasn't okay with where I was at and I wanted something else. And every time I got the next thing, it immediately revealed what I didn't have still. And I would just go try to open the next thing and do the next thing and do the next
Yep.
thing. And I just kept making bigger and bigger bets because, as you know, you get a little success, you get a little more money, you can take a little bigger bet, a little success, a little bigger money, a little bigger bet. And then I just took the biggest bet of all time, coming off of our most successful year ever. And the business was gone in 6 months, essentially. And so you're so right that you have to be okay with where you're at and know why you're doing what you're doing. I love that. Well, I'd love to
I
transition to
love
some. Yeah, go ahead.
I love to ask you a question. So
Yeah.
you said you have your own reasons. What is that? What have you discovered is the own reason for that?
I love leading, inspiring, and developing. And I have found that the best way for me to do that is to own a business, to own the means of production, to be able to um, set an example for both people that work on my team, people that I know that own other businesses, and then ultimately, as we grow, I'd love for us to be an example of what uh, entrepreneurship could be in this country because I truly believe that like this whole notion of corporations doing things for shareholder values is the biggest danger to America today. I truly believe that no matter what anybody says. And if you look at the strongest time in our country, it was when we were all closer together um, from an income standpoint, to be frank. And something happened in the 70s and 80s where we started overvaluing shareholders making more money, and it became disproportionate to the work that was being done, and it was disproportionate to the risk that was being taken by those people. And then we play out over 50 years and now we are where we are. And so I would love for my generation and you to be a part of that generation to where we can go out and build these businesses that people look to and go like, oh, business isn't evil. People aren't evil. We can make profit and do things and make the world a better place without taking advantage of people and killing the world and all those things. So that is
So
like
good. So good.
ultimately where I'm trying to go. And that's back to the infinite game thing. Like I'll never get there. And that's
Hmm.
perfectly okay with me. If I died
So good.
tomorrow, I would know that I did the best I could. I did what I did. I put my stuff out in the world. Hopefully somebody else picks up that baton. Maybe this is the conversation that does it and it goes to the next person. But it, none of us get out of this alive, and that means you better get really comfortable with the journey you're on because that's the only one you got.
So good, Chandler. I love that. So good.
Yeah, man. Thanks for asking that question. That's a good question. I don't think I've articulated that in a public forum yet, so I'm glad I
Good.
I knocked it out. I don't know. So it's a weird transition, but we're just going to hit it.
Let's go.
What's the challenges with having a B2B business? And this is really me asking a selfish question because I got a B2B business now, Hy-Vee Marketing, and we've been around about 3 years, and so I'm just looking to steal from you, man. Steal like an artist, as Austin Kleon says.
I, I don't know if I have an answer for that. I mean, that's part of the reason why we do Nexus is
Mm-hmm.
trying to get creative, but man, it's tough. Just trying to articulate if I have some good insight for you. I think that why B2B for us, it was an avenue, that, like I said, with the printing. But last year, I'll kind of go into why Nexus, the event that we're doing.
Yeah.
Last year, ever since the inception of Bevanda, we've had an open house. And what we would do is, because importing takes 5 to 6 months to get your product in. So every
Mm-hmm.
year in June, we do this local community, hey, open house, come get free food and come see what new product Bevanda is offering this year and get a 10-15% discount on your Christmas order.
Mm-hmm.
What over the years, this thing really kept growing and kept growing. And then at the peak, it kind of died off as we were growing. And what we discovered is how do we get the attention of HR managers, executives, business owners? How do we get their attention? They're not going to come out to an open house for free food and kind of see what's new. They're not going to do that. They're busy. They have other things to do. And so it was in 2022, we heard Will Guidara
Mm-hmm.
at Entree Leadership Summit, and his presentation was unbelievable. He talked about 11 Madison Park and how they've scaled to become the #1 ranked restaurant in the world through
Mm-hmm.
unreasonable hospitality. And I'm kind of on the same path as you. Is like business is all about people, and so we've always prided ourselves with good customer service, but there was still this gap of attracting the customers for us to do business with them. They would just always buy the bigger brands, or they were committed to the local promotional shop that they did business for years. So it's like, what's proprietary about your product? So we had this idea. So Will Guidara launched his book, Unreasonable Hospitality. And this was coming off of the Entree Leadership Summit where we heard him speak. And we've noticed there was probably 5 businesses in the area that were doing book studies, business book studies on Will Guidara's book. And so it was it was in a creative meeting that we had. We do that maybe twice a month where we just sit around and, hey, no idea is a bad idea. Put your ideas on the table. If we don't like it, we might say no. And so at that table was like, what would happen if we would create kind of a keynote slash some type of summit that would attract business owners? And immediately, I mean, some of these speakers, they charge 30, 40, 50 grand. And as a small business, we're like, there is no way. There's no way. And so we're like, what? Why don't we reach out to Will and see what his speaking fee is? And so just coming off of, I mean, we've been Entree Leadership 3 years in a row, kind of see how they do things. I'm intrigued by live events. And so I'm blessed to be in a community of business owners. And so I called 10 of them. Hey, I got
Mm-hmm.
this idea. Why don't you come to our open house? And they're like, well, if I come, it's because I'm your friend. But free lunch, they all kind of say the same thing. It's free
Mm-hmm.
lunch. I know what you do. And so I said, okay, if we would do a small leadership summit where we bring a speaker in, we kind of promote who we are as a business, would you come to that? It's invitation only. It'd be a free event. They're like, all 10 of them. Yep, I would come to that. And so we
Mm-hmm.
knew we had an idea. So we launched last year, hired Will Guidara, and 320 people showed up. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And so we're still trying to figure out marketing versus branding. What's the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that did
Yeah.
both for us. Now it's hard for us to really track what sales came from that. Now there's some that are directly that correlated from that event, but
Yeah.
we just began to ask people, what, why'd you buy from us? And it's like, well, we
Mm-hmm.
felt this obligation. Like, there was a ton of value at this event. There was free food, there was networking, and a 50-minute keynote from a world-class speaker. Like, that's value, and we just felt like this
Mm-hmm.
obligation to buy from you. So we kind of stumbled across that, and we were like, what's going to be a one year wonder thing? And we really knocked hospitality out of the park. Our team just did a phenomenal job. We really capitalized on the branding aspect of it. And so it became hype. People are like, what are you going to do next year? Are you going to do another event? And from a budget standpoint, we said, no, we're not going to do it. It's kind of a 1 year thing. And we just, over time, we knew we had to run it again. So that's kind of what
Mm,
landed us to this year of bringing John Delony. And I'm a huge fan of John Delony.
mm,
A lot of his content has changed the way I do business, changed the way I do relationships. So even last year, we knew that he's a top pick to come to Lancaster. And so I don't know if that answers your question from the B2B model, but going back to trade shows, I just think that trade shows, I think there's value there for some of the bigger brands. You have to stay connected.
yeah.
But as a startup, especially bootstrapping a startup, maybe some VC money, they're okay. But for us, you got to go 5 to 7 years consistently and you're going to lose money. And we weren't in a position to lose money. And I'm like, I'm not okay with losing money. I'd rather get
Mm.
creative doing something like the Will Guidara event. And so I don't know, Chandler, does that answer your question?
Well, if you're going to lose money, at least do it doing something unique like the Will Guidara event. I mean, that's much better than you wasted 20 grand or 30 grand or 40 grand on a trade show and didn't get anything from it. You just got a boring trade show story. It's like, oh, we were in Salt Lake again last weekend for 3 days of terrible speakers and the speakers that are just like it's a panel and it's like a bad podcast. Like that's the worst. But I love that whole idea, but I have my marketing juices are running now, and I just want to get invited to the next creative meeting. Maybe we can have one while I'm there in town, and I just get to be a fly on the wall and hang out. But what I'm hearing, the thing is, and you said this, reciprocity was triggered. And what we know in marketing is that we do business people with people that we know, that we like, and we trust. Step one of marketing is to get people to know about you. Step two is to get them to like you. And step three is to get them to trust you. And there's no like black and white answer for this stuff. There's no like follow these 3 steps and you're now a successful blah, blah, blah. But that's sort of the vision of your marketing plan is like, how are we constantly getting people that are our ICPs, ideal customer profiles? How do we get them to know about us? How do we get them to like us? And how do we get them to trust us? And can we do that over a long enough time horizon to where 30, 40 years from now, we are the option in this space? And I love this hosting of an event thing as a creative outlet for you guys specifically, because you get to invite, it's an application thing, and we'll share the details for this event, and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. You guys are going to have about 300 or more. What's going to be the
We,
attendance for
we,
this
we
year?
have 400 capacity, 400.
That's amazing. So you got 400 people that are going to be there in the room. Like this is going to be a great event. Like I'll make sure to link all the details for applications for it. But you're picking 400 people that you want to get to know, and you want them to get to know you. You're getting them to like you because at the hospitality point, your team is building a very special event that's not just like any other cookie cutter conference that we go to. Like I just got back from a conference in Denver that was like $800 to attend, and I cannot tell you how mad I am that I wasted all that money. Like it's just like it was just a waste of time,
Yep.
And you and I are spoiled. Like I used to work on the Entree Leadership brand, so I used to go to those events for free. You've been to them. That is an
World
epic
class,
experience. It
world
is
class.
much different. But like even that, you get to know us, you get to like us, and then you trust us because when you interact with us and we said we do something, what is trust? Like I believe the thing you said. And so when you say like, hey, I'm going to buy this cooler from you guys and I need the logo and I'm trying to send it to somebody, da, 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 and then you deliver it. And then even if you get into some of the other things like under promise, over deliver, blah, 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 like I think it's brilliant. I think it's really smart. And like, don't be upset when I, again, steal like an artist and I'm like, okay, how do I do this for a digital advertising agency and, go forward with that? Like, cause I think it's a really, really good idea. And I love that you have a culture of what I'm hearing is a sort of the core values of your business, and I wonder how close it is to the real thing. And I haven't looked on your site, but it's like we have a culture of like perseverance, hard work, creativity, service, and then like trying new things. I don't know what you would like risk taking, and I don't know if that's close to y'all's real core values or not, but that is definitely the heart that I'm hearing behind this whole interview.
You said perseverance. We have underdog mentality. We talk about it all the time because Yeti's a $2.5 billion brand. You've seen the growth of Stanley. They went from 60 million to 750 million in a short amount of time. And so
Yeah.
we're bootstrapping this thing. Extremely difficult, but it's like, hey, we're underdog mentality. We're not trying to compete with them. We're just trying to kind of create our own lane, create our own space. And so it's underdog mentality. We got to get
Mm-hmm.
after. We have nothing to lose. And I think
Yeah.
you said that as well. I have nothing to lose today.
Apply to come to this event. This Nexus event is going to be amazing. It's titled Leading with Purpose. John Delony will be the keynote speaker. You're going to be around 400 other business leaders, entrepreneurs, small business owners. It's going to be great. And what I know about being an entrepreneur myself, I've done this twice. I've been in this space for a decade, being a leader of a business and being an entrepreneur. It can be really lonely, and it doesn't have to be isolating. And part of making it not so isolating and lonely, and Jonathan, tell me if I'm right or wrong here, it's like you have to make a conceited effort to get out into the market and meet other people. Like, you got to get out of your business. You need to go take the time away, because it's amazing what happens when you get away from your day-to-day routine. All of a sudden, back to this theme of creativity running throughout this whole interview, it's like, oh, I see things in a new way. I'm talking to you about how you do things. Like, I didn't have the idea for this whole event thing. You did. And so now I'm going to go learn from you. And who knows what we'll be able to take and bring back to it with High-B marketing. And like, that is a small, small thing. So can you tell everybody how we can apply to join you guys at Nexus this year?
I'll have to send you the link, Chandler,
Okay,
where you can post on. But it's on my LinkedIn profile. I'll repost it today. So if somebody wants to get on that, but I'll send that to you when we're done here, Chandler. I don't have
great.
any. Wasn't really prepared for that question, but I can send you the link and you can blast it out.
Totally fine, man. Don't worry about it. I'm in marketing, so I will market it. That's otherwise I'm not good at my job.
And here's the thing about being an entrepreneur. You don't always have the answer. So I wasn't prepared for that question. So fire away.
You know, that is such a small thing that's going to get missed at the end of this episode, but it's a truly humble leader that can look, and we do this on sales calls all the time, where somebody will ask us a question about marketing and I'll be like, I don't know. Let me call somebody and ask you. Like, I don't run the paid ads at our company. Sure, we track everything, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know, but like, I got really good friends that will get it done at the highest level possible. So the last question I got for you, though, and this is something I didn't warn you on, and I think you're going to nail it because you've already dropped 2 books. You know, so you can't give me Unreasonable Hospitality and you can't give me Gap in the Gain. But I'd love to know, if you're talking to somebody who's an entrepreneur, leader, or a marketer, what is the book that you recommend they read, or the book that maybe changed your life the most in that space?
It's got to be The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Okay.
I read that. I've always had this entrepreneur spirit, but I didn't really know how to draw it out. I didn't really know where to go with it. 8th grade education from an Amish school. And so I did not like reading. And one of my friends had a plumbing business, and he gave me this book. He said, you got to read this. You're an entrepreneur. I picked it up and I blew through it. And
Mm,
I didn't read other books. I read that book 5 times. And
wow.
I think it's this microwave mentality. Like, I want it now, Chandler. Like, give it to me now. I just want to grow. I want to be a good leader now. And the book destroys that. It's like, no. And he gives this. Have you read the book, Chandler?
I don't think I've read that one yet. No.
It is so good. He gives this analogy of this woman at his office wanting to run a marathon. And she's like, oh, I could never do that. And he's like, challenge accepted. I'll train you free if you accept my challenge. And he just had this, he uses it as a metaphor, but he had her walk around the block 3 days a week. Just walk. You don't
Mm,
have to run. And it might take 2 years, but just walk around the block.
mm,
Do that for 3 weeks straight. I don't even know. I'm paraphrasing, but do that for 3 weeks straight. The next week, I want you to jog. The moment that you get tired, slow down and you can walk. When you catch your breath, start running around. To date, that lady has finished numerous half marathons and marathons. And I think that's kind of how the human mind is, like, well, I could never do that. Or you get the
mm,
over ambitious side of it where I want it now. 3 weeks, 3 months in, you burn out and you phase out. And
yep.
so that just kind of gave me the language of, like, you're going to sit here for a while and you're going to bake, but it's
Mm,
okay. You got to learn. There's things that you need to learn in the process. So that book, every entrepreneur that I talk to, they say, what's one book that you should read? It's got to be that one, because it talks about compound interest. It talks about a freight train, the inertia. It takes a freight train a long time to get going, but once it's
yep.
rolling, you can't stop it. And so many times here at Bevanda, we just kind of phrase that as like, hey, we feel like this, we still feel like we're pushing the snowball up the hill. It still
Mm,
feels like that. Even in year 6, we feel like we're probably going to be here year 7, maybe year 8. And who knows, we might have a breakout year, but it's this momentum where it's like you start cresting the hill and then the inertia just takes you down the other side. So, yeah, value, pick up the book. It's a great book.
Yeah, I've got it on my list. You're happy to be the one pushing the snowball no matter what, is what it sounds like. That's good. And it's funny,
Yeah.
yeah, you're just
Eh,
too competitive.
eh.
I love that. That's good, man.
It's
That's good.
interesting. Just last week, I told my team I'm very outgoing, very high energy most of the time, and I think it's
Hmm.
being vulnerable as a leader, which John Delony he shatters all those paradigms. He's a huge paradigm shift. Like you don't always have to be strong. And so it was
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. Cash flow was tight, and I told my team, guys, I'm struggling. I'm
Mm,
struggling. I don't always have the answers. I need. That's why I hired you guys is to help come up with the ideas. And it just kind of fostered this culture of wow, like Jonathan's being vulnerable right now. Like, oh, we can't
mm,
see him struggle. Let's pick up the pace here. And so, and nothing crazy has happened. It's just like being vulnerable in that state has really just kind of relaxed the atmosphere of like
mm,
July is tough, cash flow is tight. We'll get through it, but we need everybody to pitch in. So it's not just me pushing the snowball up the hill. And I think entrepreneurship can kind of be like that. You shoulder a lot of responsibilities.
mm,
I'm starting to question, does it have to be that way? Because your team, they want to share the burden with you.
mm.
That's kind of what I've learned the last 2 to 3 weeks. So
I like that. Well, next year we'll have to have a part two of this interview where we unpack. Does the entrepreneur have to be the one pushing the snowball, or can you have
yeah,
help? That's a good teaser for the next time we're together on this podcast, man. Jonathan, I appreciate you joining me. I appreciate everybody listening. We will see you next